Welcome into the latest edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. My name's Barrett Salih, kicking off a Monday here on the show. We're one day after Selection Sunday. Yes, basketball is on everybody's mind, but football is always on. 24/7, 365, like my good friend Josh Pate says. There is no offseason. And speaking of Josh, look, I want to be part of your ecosystem. College football is the most undercovered sport in the country. We want to fix that. So listen to Pate, listen to Pikel, listen to Staples, listen to all these guys, because we're here for you. We're here to provide you content 24/7, 365 because you deserve it. We're 30 episodes into the revamped edition of the show. If you don't know or you don't remember, College Football Smothered and Covered is a revamped edition of SEC Smothered and Covered, which we were forced to shut down in 2018 through no fault of my own. Still not happy about that. Still owed a little bit of money, so you know who you are if you owe that money. But nevertheless, we are here for you, episode 30 here on the show. Speaking of the show, got a big one today. I used to work at CBS Sports. I love CBS Sports, and content is king. It's list season, and my former colleague Will Backus came out with his most important player for each of the top 25 teams. So we'll break down some hits and misses that Will had in that story. You can read it, of course, at cbssports.com. No ill will towards the dudes over there. Great people. So go check them out. But we'll break down the hits and misses from that story. And to wrap things up today, there is a college basketball story that is correlated with college football. So we will definitely bring that to you. Speaking of bringing it to you, check out BreakingT.com. This is the legend of Blake Corum, of course, legendary Michigan running back, moved on to the NFL, helped Michigan to 2 straight college football playoff appearances, and of course, last year's national championship. Go to BreakingT.com/smothered and covered if you want any of their college football gear. They have a ton of it, whether it be legendary shirts like this, sport tees from breaking moments that night. If something big happens, they'll bring it to you within a matter of hours. You can purchase them right after those breaking moments, those viral moments. Also, legendary Tom Glavine, Andrew Jones, all those legendary players, whether it be baseball, college football, or whatever, you can get some of their gear as well. So if you want some of that, if you want Braves gear in anticipation of the season, go to breakingT.com/Barrett for those. All right. Like I said, my colleague at CBS Sports, my former colleague, I should say, at CBSSports.com, Will Backus. Oh, and I should mention, if you have any comments, drop them in the comment section. I'll try to get to them as appropriate. So if you have any comments, whether you're watching on Twitter, X, YouTube, Facebook, wherever, drop a comment in. I do see it, and I will try to get to it if I can. So CBS Sports came out with its top, the most important player for each of the top 25 teams. So we'll go, speaking of Michigan, to what Will said about Michigan. It's Donovan Edwards, obviously. Running back comes back, is now probably going to be the number one. Yeah, they could do a 1A, 1B type scenario, but Donovan Edwards is slated to be the workhorse. Do I agree or do I disagree? Well, I agree with Will, because yeah, you can sit here and talk about the quarterback situation, but a steady running game will help whoever wins that quarterback position. Now, let's be honest, going into spring practice, going into fall camp, the quarterback is going to be at the top of everybody's mind because J.J. McCarthy is a legend. We know what he was able to do at Michigan in terms of the last couple of years. So yeah, all eyes are going to be on that. And it's important. But this dude right here, Donovan Edwards, is that man, because no matter who wins the job at quarterback, Alex Orji, Jaden Denegal, who's had a great, who has a lot of anticipation going into the spring, I should say, Jack Tuttle, who's had an up and down career all over the place, Davis Ward and Jaden Davis also in the mix. Combined between those guys, all of them, 36 career passes at Michigan. 36 career passes at Michigan. So you're not going to come in throwing darts all over the place. If you're Sherrone Moore, you are going to rely on that running game. And I think the question is, okay, can Donovan Edwards be the guy who is the true number one? Because Blake Corum has been the workhorse. And I think the answer is yes, because he showed it late in the 2022 season when Corum was out. Michigan needed to finish things off, and they did finish things off, made it to the college football playoff through really Donovan in addition. I would say those two guys were pretty much equal in terms of their importance to that Michigan team. So I absolutely love that he is considered the most important player on the Michigan Wolverines. Yeah, is it a little unorthodox? Sure, because I think, again, the natural inclination is to say, well, JJ is going to have to be the quarterback. It's the player at the most important position. Why wouldn't it be JJ McCarthy? And I'm not saying it's a lazy take. It's an easy take. And you can argue that it's the right take. I don't think it's the right take. I think CBS Sports nailed it here. So good for them, good for Will for getting things right. Speaking of getting things right, another one that I love, Phil Maffa from Clemson. Now, I think it's also easy to sit there and say, well, it's Cade Klubnik. Why wouldn't it be Cade Klubnik? He's the quarterback. Clemson's built on quarterbacks. It's the most important position. But Phil Maffa was that dude. He was really the number one back last year. Yeah, Will Shipley was solid, but Phil Maffa, yeah, he broke out in the bowl game. I think we'll all remember that bowl game. But he led the Tigers with 965 and 13. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for a team that, yeah, it started out slow, but they hit their stride late. Why did they hit their stride late? Because they found an identity. What was that identity? Well, it was Phil Maffa more than Will Shipley, and nothing against Will Shipley. I think he's a fantastic player. And again, leave your comments, Clemson fans, Michigan fans, whoever, leave your comments if you can, if you want to. I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. But Clemson found an identity. Is it a national championship identity? Probably not. They need to build off of it, but they know it. And knowing is half the battle. So if you have a pretty good grasp of what you are going into spring practice, yeah, you're going to add some pieces here and there in the transfer portal. And yes, Dabo, I do believe, will hit the transfer portal this spring, way more than he has in years past, because I think he understands now the roster is nowhere close to as deep as it needs to be. Yes, it was at running back, though, last year. And that's why I think you add Phil Maffa to the mix as a number one running back. You can supplement him with whoever. You can maybe, just maybe, fingers crossed, if you're a Clemson fan, actually use Cade Klubnik as a running quarterback, maybe more than you have. It seems like they've been a little reluctant to do that. I get it that he's not, Deshaun Watson out there, but he's more than a willing runner. So why don't you use him to do that? So I think going into fall camp, they're going to know who they are no matter what happens in the transfer portal. So you're going to fine tune things. And that's the biggest thing now, especially in this day and age of player movement. If you know who you are, if you know what your identity is in early August, then you've got a really good shot of taking care of business early. And in this day and age, in a 12-team playoff, if you take care of business early, if you don't have one of those slip-ups, even if you aren't one of the top 12 teams at the end of the season, you might have played your way into one of those spots. Why? Because you didn't suffer that early season stumble. So to me, is Clemson a national championship caliber team? No. I had them number 3, though, in the college football playoff, because I do think they will be the third best conference champion. Will they suffer a loss along the way? Probably. Will it be early? I don't think so, because they know their identity going into the season. And that's one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough, is that, yeah, it's a short season. In basketball right now, it is about who gets hot. In football, I think it's not going to be about who gets hot, who gets in. It's about who's hot early and can suffer those setbacks down the stretch, because it won't matter if they're cold. So I think it's going to be a little reversed. And I think for Clemson, I don't think they have the talent to be a national championship caliber team, but when the ACC get the 3rd slot, maybe even the 4th slot, depending what happens in the Big 12, fine. Phil Maffa's a big reason why. We're going to get to what I don't like in Will Backus's predictions for the most important players on the top 25 teams in the country. But Breaking T, look at that. Look at the top left corner of those pictures. Aw, there's my daughter, Samantha. We made the email. We made the promotional email from Breaking T. You can get basketball shirts, obviously, as well with Marquette Basketball. But look at little Samantha there. That was a long time ago. And yes, if you don't notice, if you haven't noticed, look at what shirt I'm wearing. It's the same one. Go to breakingt.com/Braves and get these. But Breaking T does a great job with viral moments. Go to breakingt.com/smothered and covered if you want to get some football gear. And again, baseball right around the corner. You can see that little 755 shirt next to that cute little Disney shirt? Well, you know what? I'm wearing it right now because I love the guys at Breaking Tea. So go to breakingtea.com/smothered and covered. They will hook you up with all of your gear heading into college football season or Major League Baseball season. All right, let's get to some maybe not accurate picks in the CBSSports.com story. Savion Byrd from SMU. Now, two things on this. One, I love that SMU has that 19 next to its name because I don't think that SMU will have a big challenge stepping into the ACC because the ACC sucks. The ACC sucks. So if you're SMU, you're picking the perfect time to come in to that conference. You're picking the perfect time. And Rhett Lashley is a great coach. One of the best coaches, I think, in the country. Really underrated. We hope to have him on the show relatively soon. But hit the transfer portal hard. Brilliant offensive mind. And yes, Savion Byrd's a big deal. But this guy is a bigger deal, and that is Preston Stone. Yeah, he broke his leg. He missed the bowl game. But if he comes back healthy, to me, you talk about dark horse contenders for the Heisman Trophy. This dude's it. Because I look at that team. We talk about Cinderellas, right? Cinderella doesn't really make the 4-team playoff. Cinderella might not even, be considered one of the top 10 teams. But could SMU win the ACC in year one? Not saying it's going to happen because, like I said before, Clemson, I think, would be the team. We're going to talk about another ACC team here in a second. But SMU, good enough to spring an upset. Good enough to be the best team in the ACC for 60 minutes on any given day. Are they going to be as consistent? No. But they are good enough to spring upsets against everybody on their conference schedule. So pick the right upsets, and they're in. The guy who can do that, yeah, offensive line's important. I get that. And Will Backus makes a very good point for Savion Byrd. But Preston Stone's that dude, especially considering he's coming off injury. So I think, SMU, it gets so overlooked. And I was fully on board. I will tell you this, not from Will, but from a lot of other people within the Paramount Plus community. I got ripped to shreds because, A, I thought SMU was a perfect fit for the ACC and that they would move somewhere, and they did. I got ripped to shreds because I thought they'd make the AAC championship game and be ranked, and they were. And I'm right about this. SMU will contend for the ACC championship. Are they going to make the ACC championship game? I would say probably not. But if they get good offensive line play, and Will Backus says that they will because Savion Byrd, he says, is the most important player, I think it's Preston Stone. Either way, that's a very good football team. And they are a dark horse to at least make the ACC championship game. So I love SMU. I think it's going to be a very, very good team this year. All right, last one before we get to the basketball/football story of March Madness. Florida State. And let's say, if you have comments, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to get to them. Florida State. Will says Patrick Payton. Look, I get it. Defense is important. Edge rushing is important. You have to create chaos in the backfield. That's absolutely a big deal, especially after Jared Verse left. For Florida State, look, it's a big – we talked about it last week. That game against Georgia Tech in Ireland in week 0 is huge because all eyes are going to be on Florida State. Are they a contender or are they a pretender? Are they fake or are they legit? A lot of that has to do with how they replace stars, and certainly replacing Jared Verse is a big deal. This is a bigger deal. This is a bigger deal. It's DJ Uiagalelei. I think DJU is the most important player for Florida State. And look, it's, again, pretty easy to sit there and say, oh, yeah, well, the quarterback, yeah, you have a top 15, top 10 team. Of course, he's going to be the most important player. Well, yeah, I mean, that is obvious. However, it's the right pick. It's Occam's razor, right? Sometimes the easiest pick is the right pick. Sometimes the easiest explanation is the right explanation. And look, I think for DJU, obviously, his career has not gone anywhere like we thought it would. I remember DJU committed to Clemson on Full Ride with Chris Childress and Rick Neuheisel on Sirius XM. And of course, I work with Sirius XM. So little, not so subtle shout out to the employer. But the hype around him, especially after Deshaun and Trevor, was unfair. And then he goes up to Notre Dame. Trevor Lawrence is on the COVID list. And he sets records. Like, that game was incredible. Now they lost, but it was incredible. And then all the hype just got built even more. And then we know what happened the next 2 years. But it was unfair to compare him to Trevor. It was unfair to compare him to Deshaun. And he goes to Oregon State, and I think they found, like, Jonathan Smith did a good job of figuring out exactly what he's good at and playing toward that. Now, he didn't have much help. I know, Oregon State was, in the mix for a New Year's Six bowl for a lot of the season. I don't think they really figured out how to use DJU all year long. They put Childs in every, third series. There was some sort of rule that Jonathan Smith had where you have to put Childs in every third series or the third series of every game or whatever it was. It doesn't matter. I still think they've had it, that DJ has not been used properly. And I do think that Mike Norvell can use him properly. So, and even if I'm wrong, and Peyton is the most important player off the edge, I still think that just seeing what DJU's potential is would be enormous. And I do think that he will have his best season. I'm interested in Florida State. You guys know I'm very interested in Florida State. Florida State fans, y'all know very well how much hype I had for you, how confident I was that Florida State would make the playoff last year. They should have made the playoff last year. I will stand on that hill. I will die on that hill. But nevertheless, they performed exactly like I thought they would. Now, I said they'd be a playoff team. Yeah, the injuries sucked, but they would have been a playoff team had Jordan Travis not got hurt. And I think this year I'm not as bullish, but if you get a good year of DJU, could he be better than Jordan Travis? Like, if you get the DJU, the potential that we saw in that Notre Dame game when he was a true freshman in the COVID year in a loss. But if we get that kind of guy, then Florida State's a national championship contender again. They might be anyway because of the ACC. But despite all the roster losses, I still think DJ's got it in him. I think he was uncomfortable at Clemson. He said that. I think the talent wasn't around him at Oregon State. That's obvious. But I think Norvell can use him properly, use him as that bruiser, as a runner, and then let him take the top off of defense. I think he's gotten better in deep passes. I think he was maybe hindered by the lack of talent around him at Oregon State. He's got that cannon. So I think that it'll be fascinating to see what happens. But Florida State, I would disagree with Will. I think it's DJU. There's no doubt about it. Reminder, last time before we get to a fun little story, breakingt.com/smotheredandcovered. Get this Blake Corum t-shirt, any t-shirt. They had DJU t-shirts. They've got Nico Iamaleava t-shirts. They've got 4th and 31 t-shirts. Anything you can possibly imagine in terms of college football fan, whether it be viral moments or the legendary figures for a school or for a baseball team, they have it for you. Hit the comments. Ryan Fernandez, why are you wearing an outdated shirt? I'm not wearing an outdated shirt. Hank Aaron is the true home run king. He will always be the true home run king. That's why it says 755 forever. Legends never die. He is the true home run king. Barry Bonds. I was bigger than Barry Bonds during the beginning of his major league career. And he could have been the best. Look, I will die on this hill too. Barry Bonds could have been one of the best major league players of all time had he not taken steroids. When he was still little, when he was still that little dude, that 6'1", 210 guy, he could have still been the best major league baseball player of all time. But he took steroids, and now, like, I'm not saying I wouldn't have taken steroids. I'm not saying that it's the bad thing, but it's a different era. You have to qualify it as a different era. If Hank Aaron took steroids, he'd hit about 1,000 home runs. So it's not an outdated shirt, Ryan. It's just an ode to the greatest home run hitter of all time, and that is Hank Aaron. All right, last thing. Check this out. James Madison, the Dukes, they were the talk of college football for the majority of the season. They got game day. They weren't going to be allowed to play in a bowl. Then they played in a bowl and all of that stuff. I didn't realize this. They're playing Wisconsin in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. I think it's Friday night. I think they get the last round of games. They're in the last round of games. The football and basketball team had 5 losses combined. I don't even know if I honestly, I could go to Stats Inc. or whatever, ESPN Stats and whatever. I've never even heard of that. Like I guess Florida, but even when Florida won the 2006 football title, that was their first of the 2 back-to-back. I don't know if they had, because they lost a football game. I don't know if they had 4 basketball loss. They had more than 4. And then I know the next year, the second of those back-to-back basketball national championships, they were like 10-6 in conference. In fact, I think that was exactly what they were, because my co-host on Sirius XM on Sunday was Matt McCall. He was a player or bench warmer. He was there. He was physically on that team. But that's cool. That's really cool that James Madison, if you're a James Madison student, what a great year. What a great athletic year, especially if you're a senior finishing off your career in style. That'll do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. A reminder, if you have not given us a like, if you have not subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. Give us a 5-star review. If you don't like the show, give us a 1-star review. Tell us why you don't like the show, because we're constructive criticism. I think in this day and age, everyone just wants to yell at each other all the time. Why? If you don't like something I said, tell me. If you don't like something I do, tell me. I can tell you right back if I don't like something you do. And we don't have to be mean about it. We can still be friends. So leave a negative review if you don't like something about this show. We'll see what happens Tuesday. Maybe some football breaking news might be in the works. If there is, we'll talk about it Tuesday. Have a good one.